I am Sarajane Case, and this is Enneagram and Coffee. Hello everyone, and happy Wednesday. Today we are answering a question that was called in discussing typing yourself between type 2 and type 7. But first, today's rose, bud, and thorn. So my rose for today is that we woke up to a snow day. There's just nothing else quite like waking up to a full blanket of snow over the world. And we have, my other rose is those YouTube fireplaces. You know how you can put a fireplace up on your TV? I feel like it doesn't feel quite right on a snow day unless that fireplace is on. My bud is that I have yet to have my afternoon coffee, which means it is yet to come. And I am so excited. My thorn for today is that, you know that feeling where you have a jug of milk and you think it's fine, but it kind of smells weird and you can't really tell if your milk smells bad for real, like if it's gone bad, or if you just think it smells bad because you don't really smell your milk very much and milk just kind of has a smell. That's my thorn. Okay, first, so let's listen to today's caller.
Hi, Sarajane. Love your podcast. I wanted to ask you a question about the enneagram types. I understand that there's only one type. Most people only have one type. It's very rare to have two. Well, it took me about 4 months to figure out my type. I ended up spending $65 on a really thorough Enneagram assessment that I got through a therapist friend and got a major report. And I was always tied between 2 and 7. And I literally identify with both of them very, very closely. And my question is, I came out as a 7 on this assessment, and I believe it. I accept it. I love our 7-ness. But the 2, again, there's this other piece of me where I feel very connected to it. And I didn't know. I know that our personalities tend to develop in the first 5 years of life, I believe. And I did have a major trauma when I was 4. I was mauled by a dog, and I was in the hospital for over a month by myself a lot at 4 years old. And so I also have a lot of medical trauma throughout my whole childhood with asthma and allergies. I was hospitalized a lot or having to stay at home sick and stuck inside. So I can totally see where my 7-ness comes from, but the 2 aspect of it, could I have been developing into more of a 2 those first 4 years of life? And then because of my trauma and then just kind of the continual trauma, I morphed into more of a 7. I swear I'm not trying to be unique, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are and if you have any perspective on that. Thanks for all of your wise wisdom and your help, and keep up the great work. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for calling in. It means so much that you enjoy the podcast. I want to answer first a couple of the questions that you asked. So the first one is about, personality developing. They do say that personality develops before we are 5, and I do imagine that your experiences did impact who you've become in some way or another. Now, according to the Enneagram in particular, the soul child theory, you would have been considered a 5 as a child if you were dominant type 7. So the theory is that as a child, a 7 resembles a 5. Maybe they are a little bit more independent. They go off on their own more. They manage their energy levels. They're deep into research. And at some point along the way, to keep that 5 safe, they learned to be put on the 7 personality type. As a 7 myself, I've thought of it often like I am deep down a 5, but I have my 7 defense mechanism. And everyone who teaches the Enneagram and everyone who is studying the Enneagram doesn't always say it like that. That is kind of the way that I tend to think about it for myself. I've said recently in a panel that I think of my smile as kind of my castle. That's my protection. Is if I look like I'm okay, then then I will be left alone kind of deal. So that's the soul child theory for 7. If you were to be a dominant type 2, then the theory would be that you are 4 as a child and that you have put the 2 mechanism on to protect yourself in that way. I do have a full episode just on soul child theory that breaks all of this down, so you can go listen to that if that's something that you want to learn more about. But let's talk a little bit about discerning between types 2 and type 7. So first, it's always important to remember that we're focusing here on the motivations and the basic fears. So if you relate to the motivations of type 7, great. If not, do you resonate with the motivations of type 2? If you are resonating with the behavior of 1 without relating to the motivations, that could lead us into some of the subtype distinction. The major differences between 2s and 7s are that 2s are relational. So they're looking for their worth in the eyes of other people, meaning, do you love me? Do you like me? No matter what subtype of 2 you are, that element is going to be there. So what that can look like is, maybe you're doing that through work. Maybe you're doing that through you're just wanting to be loved for who you are. Or maybe you're being overly helpful in order to earn love. Then we have our type 7, and type 7 is less relational and very self-referencing. So they're focused on kind of like, what do I want? What do I need? Where am I going? Typically, 7s know what they want and need at all times, while 2s tend to struggle to hold awareness for their own needs. They're very aware of what other people need, but tend to struggle with the awareness of their own needs. So if you feel connected to both 2 and 7, this could be a subtype thing. So social 7s can look a lot like type 2s, meaning that they tend to be self-sacrificing, they tend to overgive, they tend to kind of feel a conflict between, okay, I know what I want, but I don't know that I'm allowed to have it. That's kind of the inner conflict for social 7s. And that can cause them in behavior to look a lot like a 2, even though their internal experience and deep down they are a 7. Self-preservation 2s, however, can look like 7s and sometimes like 4s. And that's because the self-preservation 2 is kind of the least helpful of the 2s. They're the more focused on, I want you to love me for who I am, not what I do. But the focus here is still on the external validation of being loved and accepted and wanted. So I already covered the subtypes of 2, so if you want to hear more about what the self-preservation 2 sounds like in comparison to the other 2s, you can go check that out. And then tomorrow, we're actually going over subtypes of type 7, so you can check that out here if you want to hear even more about what a social 7 looks and sounds like. I hope that this was helpful. If you have questions that you want answered on the podcast, you can call in at 828-338-9127. You can also text, but I will say if you call and leave a voicemail, those get answered first, just because I think it's more interesting to hear your voice. And today's food for thought comes from Gandhi. I will not let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet. And this quote always reminds me of my mom. When we were kids and someone would express road rage at her, she would say, they can choose to have a bad day, but I'm not going to let them ruin mine. And she'd smile and she'd wave at them and she'd move on with her day. And this level of unbothered is something I truly strive for, even with my own emotions. As negative emotions arise, to not let them control me or scare me or cause me to panic, but just to allow them to be here. And they exist and I exist and they are what they are, and that's okay. As always, it's such a joy to create content like this for you. If you want your Enneagram questions answered, again, call them in at 828-338-9127. Thank you for being here, and I will see you tomorrow for the next episode.